What's going on, guys? JP back at you once again, bring you guys day number 6 in my 10th annual 31 Days of Horror, a series in which we watch and review 31 horror films in 31 days, all during the month of October, leading right up to Halloween, and continuing along with the theme this year of a new company every 5 days. We are looking at Warner Archive for the second company. And Warner Archive is a company that's been around for quite a while now, but I really didn't pay attention to them until the last couple years. Warner Archive was known for their burn-on-demand service, which was essentially a MOD or a manufacture-on-demand service where you ordered something and they sent you a burned DVD-R title, which was, manufactured on demand. Although they had a lot of cool titles that I wanted, like Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and Bad Ronald and some other classic TV horror films, as well as, other just great horror films that haven't been on disc, I really didn't see the value because they were around $15 to $20 a piece, and I just didn't feel like that was really worth it for burned DVDs, right? Like DVD-Rs. Even though they were official releases, just something about them being DVD-Rs bugged me. So I never really got into Warner Archive at that time. It wasn't until they started releasing Blu-rays a good maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit shorter, that I started getting interested. Because they did have one cool thing about the way they released titles and the way they sold titles, and that was every couple of months, maybe 6 months, they would do a 4 for $44 sale, and you basically could get any of their titles that weren't newly released for $11 each. You could buy 4 and they came out to $44, usually with free shipping. And I usually got more than 4. I would get usually around 8. So that was usually my thing. And so I started picking up their Blu-rays because eventually they did start releasing Blu-rays, and they weren't burn on demand. They weren't Blu-ray Rs. They were official pressed Blu-ray discs. So that made me really happy. And ever since then, I've pretty much got most of the releases I wanted. There are still a handful of horror titles that I don't have, but it's not that many. I pretty much picked up as many of the horror stuff as I could. Now recently they did let go of a lot of employees, and there's rumors that the Warner Archive label is ending, but it's still going currently, and they kind of moved homes to Amazon. And I believe Amazon did do a 4 for $44 sale, but we haven't seen one since then. So it is a little worrisome, but I think that Warner Archive has a lot of awesome titles. You have everything from slasher films to these sort of classic horror films, and then you have a lot of TV movies as well. Stuff like that I've reviewed on here before, like Bad Ronald, which is a really awesome TV movie, and Don't Be Afraid of the Dark is another one. They have a pretty fun selection of movies from the 60s, 70s, and even some from the 80s and 90s. But 60s, 70s, and earlier is kind of like their cream of the crop, but they even released stuff like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, aka Leatherface, which is really cool. Very awesome label. I'm a big fan of it. I keep pointing over here because that's where my Warner Archives are. But anyway, let's get into the title that I picked for day number 1, and that is a title that I've never seen. I have seen the remake to this film, and that is Village of the Damned. I actually owned this on VHS as a kid, and I never watched it because I would start it and I just wasn't the biggest fan of black and white. But I did watch black and white movies because the TV that I had was black and white when I was a little bit younger, but then when I got older, I didn't want anything to do with black and white because I was forced black and white for so long. But now I love black and white. Anyway, Village of the Damned from the year 1960. Really interesting movie. It opens up and everybody sort of passes out in this town. And anybody who goes into this town passes out. They fly a plane overhead and the pilot passes out and crashes. So it's a very weird situation. And then it just stops and everybody wakes up. But there are a handful of women in the village or the town that are pregnant now. And they also all have the kids at the exact same time. The same day, the same time, which is very weird. And not only that, but the rate of growth and development from their, first form to their having birth form, from their embryo to the time that they are ready to have the kid has sped up dramatically. It's like 6 months instead of 9 months or something. And all the women have these kids at the exact same time, and they all seem to grow very fast, and they also seem to learn and be very smart, and they also seem to have sort of this telekinesis type of thing between each other. They seem to be able to communicate in like a hive mentality, which is interesting and scary. As the kids begin to grow up, they are, I don't know, I'm bad at placing ages, maybe like 8 or something. I don't know. They seem to communicate with each other telepathically, and they're able to read minds, and they essentially like congregate and work together and essentially create problems and even murders in this town. And everybody in the town begins to fear these kids. And it turns out that this is happening at other places on Earth too, and where these kids are like becoming powerful and taking control of towns, and it seems like a real threat to humanity. These kids are very smart and very creepy. So that's basically the plot. And this movie is really enjoyable. It is a super short movie. It's only 77 minutes, and it cruises by. I almost would have liked some more time when the children were, babies and toddlers and, that era, because I feel like there was a lot of creepy stuff you could have done with them. And the exposition that we got, I thought was like really cool. Like the mythology of these kids is really neat, and I almost wanted to explore that world a little bit more. All the kids are super creepy. They have these like very stoic faces. They talk very intelligently. They all have this blonde platinum hair, which it's black and white, so it just looks really white. But the adults really start to fear these kids, and I do too. Like, I'm like, man, these kids are creepy as hell. Like, I would not want to be around these kids. So it's a very fun movie. I really enjoyed Village of the Damned. It's so much better than the Carpenter version. I have no idea why he remade that. I know there's a sequel to this called Children of the Damned. I'm kind of curious about it, but not... I've heard like kind of mixed things on that one, so I'm not going to jump and run out and check it out. But Village of the Damned, the original, really enjoyed it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Another reason why this Warner Archive label is fun, because they put out a lot of old movies I haven't seen yet. So that was a little bit of a blind spot that I'm happy that I got to. So with that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another Warner Archive review. Until then, peace out.